You guys feel like talking about addiction? I sure do. As many of you know, I am a recovering drug addict, alcoholic, and I have been sober for a while now, number of years. I would say that I'm in a pretty good spot, but there was a time when things they weren't so great. I was a homeless veteran. You always see the homeless vets on the side of the road with the signs. I wasn't quite that, but I was sure working at it. Oh man, it took me a long time to get sober, and I put my family through hell. But I actually don't really want to go into my personal history because I think it's more important. Like, I want to talk about the nature of addiction, the addictions that we have, overcoming them, and the positivity that comes from the other side. But what is an addiction? An addiction is a habit. Oh, my wife's texting me. An addiction is a habit that has negative consequences. This is the medical definition. If you have negative consequences and you cannot stop, that is addiction. That's the difference between addiction and habit. So, your habit is you brush your teeth every day. Well, let's just say you were rubbing your gums raw because you're one of those obsessive OCD types and you're bleeding and you just can't stop yourself. Well, okay, maybe that's a bad example. That's actually probably a psychological issue you need to see a shrink for. But so is addiction. Addiction is a mental illness. Lifting weights. We all lift weights. Let's say you're one of those guys and you, like me, for a while there, I was kind of caught up in like trying to top myself every week for YouTube. And I was kind of injuring myself. But I was obsessed. Like, it seemed like if I didn't beat last week's YouTube comments, they would, if you were only as good as your last lift, and it's really easy to get caught up. So I was injuring myself and I couldn't stop the behavior, and that would have been the definition of addiction. Obviously, the easy ones, the low-hanging fruit, is alcohol, drugs. If you drink excessively and you have negative consequences, DUIs, you wind up in jail, you blackouts, and you can't stop, you're probably an alcoholic. Same thing with drugs. It could be shopping. Maybe you're addicted to, I like browsing Amazon. I love it. I don't know. It's just something about. It's more exciting to buy the thing than it is to get the thing. Well, if you can't stop shopping and say it's affecting your ability to pay your bills, that's an addiction. Matter of fact, I think a lot of these online shopping, the browsers like Amazon, eBay, everybody gets online. I think a lot of them kind of share similar properties to gambling. There's a dopamine rush to it, and they, based on what you look at, they shove that thing in your face, and you buy something and you're like, oh, I gotta have that too. I didn't think about that. And they really know what they're doing. They really can psychologically hook a person, and before you know it, you got online to buy one thing and now you're buying 100, and everything's so cheap. Individually, it makes it really easy to rack up a large amount of money really fast. Gambling is an obvious one. I live in Vegas, and gambling is an insidious one. I know guys that they get paid and they will literally blow their entire paycheck that night, and they won't have money to pay their bills. And these guys make good money too. It is crazy. I've never seen anything as insidious as a gambling addiction. Sex, my wife seems to think that might have that. All kidding aside, I would say I definitely probably had a porn addiction for a while. For a while there, I was really into porn, and it was affecting our relationship. And I treated that the same way I treated the way I approached it was the same way I approached my alcohol and drug addiction. And that's pretty much what I do with anything that crops up. I have an addictive personality. And when that happens, I do seek help for it. Could be, for me, I have a counselor. I'm dialed into the recovery community. And I talk to people. Like, I don't do it alone. Anytime something crops up in my life and it could meet the definition of addiction, I seek help, because I've gotten to the point, I'm lucky. So I'm dialed in with a really good support system, and I know what to do when my behaviors start, getting out of hand and other people notice. And luckily I'm surrounded with good people who aren't afraid to tell me how they really feel about things. Sometimes it's hard to swallow, but it's really awesome, because I think left to my own devices, if it was just me, I'd probably be dead by now. But luckily I have a family and I have people that care about me. But you might be, maybe you're wondering if you're addicted. Maybe you're having problems with alcohol. Maybe you're having problems with drugs. Maybe you're starting to see negative consequences. Or maybe you are a full-blown addict and you just want to stop. And I'm here to tell you, it's a process. What they don't tell you is about 80 to 85% of all people that get sober or break their addictive habits relapse. The numbers are staggering. And that, when you hear that, that can be very disheartening. But what they don't tell you is that if you keep going back and you keep getting better and you keep doing less and less over time, you will break that addiction. So you got to keep trying. You can't just give up if you go through all that and you fall. And I would say, for people that have to deal with people that are addicted to drugs, like, maybe you don't understand. Maybe you're a codependent, or you're a person that lives with an alcoholic or an addict, and you just don't get why they can't stop. I don't know how to explain it, but they basically don't have the power to stop. For certain things like alcohol, heroin, drugs that have severe physical addictions, you get so sick and you're in so much pain and misery trying to get off the drug that it's often too difficult to do by yourself. And if you love that person, you wouldn't even want to see them go cold turkey, because it could physically kill them. And they're in the worst physical pain and misery imaginable. So what I encourage people to do is honestly check yourself into a rehab, because what that'll do is, not only will it separate you from everything, they will medically care for you, and they will give you drugs that help get over the hump. And a lot of, for me, for alcohol, they gave me something called Librium and some other drug, and basically it gave you a slight euphoric feeling, and it calmed you down, and it got rid of the jitters and the shakes and the sickness and the nausea, and it made getting off of alcohol really easy. And it was medically monitored, and they tapered off. Within a week, you're completely sober. So it's only temporary that they give you this stuff. But what it does is it allows you to skip the nightmare of physical withdrawals. There's a lot of people that say, well, how are they going to learn if they don't go through that? No, I'm telling you right now, it is so hard. That is the reason why most of them can't get sober, is because they just don't have the willpower and the strength, the fortitude to get through that part of it. And they'll get to a point where they will literally do anything to make that misery end. And you don't, and maybe you got the guy in your life who's just able to quit cold turkey, and he's a real cowboy, and he did it all by himself. God damn it. Good. Awesome. But most people aren't built like that. I wasn't built like that. I couldn't do it. I had to have help. And I don't mind saying that. There's another side to it. I'm one of the success stories, and I know there's a lot of success stories, and it's always people that, even if they fall off the wagon, they keep going back. Now, I relapsed at least 13 times. I went through every single spin dry rehab in the valley. There's a difference between usually, if they check yourself into a hospital, they'll help you get sober with, you're there for 3 or 4 days, and then they'll check you out. there, or you can stay usually for a recovery program, which is an additional like 8 to 12 weeks, and it's a commitment, and then you go through a program. And I never did that. I always just checked myself in for the weekend, got sober, went right back to work, and acted like nothing happened. And I did that for a long time. It wasn't until like I committed myself to actually doing a rehab program and completing it. And even then, I still think I relapsed once or twice, but every single time it was a little bit better, and I knew what to do, and I just kept trying to get sober, and I just kept trying, and I just kept trying. Some people do, they're lucky. If you can get sober on the first shot, man, that's awesome. I was not that guy. It took me a bunch of times. But I just kept going back, and eventually the day came where I no longer saw alcohol as a solution. I think what I had done is the last time I drank, I kind of poisoned myself to the point where when I smelled alcohol, it made me physically sick, which is good. I was so happy about that. I was so happy that alcohol grossed me out. And that's not where you want to be long term, but for the short term, anything that you can latch onto. If you're physically repulsed by the smell of the thing that you're addicted to and you won't do it, that's great. Over time, it became less and less, and now I'm to the point where I buy my wife alcohol. Like, I go partying with them, we go dancing, we go to bars if there's people there. If all my friends are meeting at a bar, I'm not going to stay home on a Friday or Saturday night. I'm going to go out. I'm going to have fun. It took a few years to get to that point, but, life goes on. I don't feel like I'm missing out on anything by not drinking. I couldn't imagine going out and like, how are you going to have fun if everybody else is drinking and you're not? And I'll be honest with you, it does kind of suck at a certain point. You get to that 1 o'clock in the morning and everybody's like still drinking, and you're like, now you got to listen to people talk politics. They're slurring their speech, and their breath stinks, and they yell at you, and they yell every word into your ear. That gets kind of old, but I wouldn't, like, the fun part when everybody first starts and they're just bubbly and they're having fun dancing and everybody's having a good time, I wouldn't want to miss out on that. And my wife loves to dance, so why wouldn't I take her dancing? I'm not going to, just because I have a problem, it doesn't mean I'm going to put my crap on other people. And you don't have to. You absolutely don't have to. You'll get to a point where you can live a normal life and you can participate in all the things that normal people participate in. You just don't drink. You just don't do drugs. You just don't do whatever that behavior is. And if you have other kinds of addiction, such as gambling, such as shopping, such as sex, such as porn, whatever the case is, whatever it is you think you're addicted to, the process is essentially the same for all of them. It's directly confronting your problems, taking an inventory of everything in your life that you essentially feel bad or guilty about, confronting those problems. AA has a way, what they do is they make you take an inventory of all the things that you did bad and all the people that you hurt and all the people that hurt you. And then you make a list and you try to rectify everything. So it's, in a way, it's a lot more spiritual or religious, but it's essentially accomplishing the same thing that your psychotherapist would try to accomplish by having you talk everything through and confront the same issues. So regardless of whether you use a doctor or whether you go through a 12-step program, which I recommend highly, whether it's some sort of group that's dedicated support group, make sure you get help. Reach out to somebody. And you can always contact guys like me who have gotten sober, because we believe it's our duty to pay it forward and to help other people get sober. So if anybody reaches out to me and says that they have a problem drinking, it is literally my duty to make sure I do whatever I can to help facilitate that person getting help. That being said, you got to still draw healthy boundaries. Just because it's our duty to help an alcoholic doesn't mean we're going to enable them. And that's a problem a lot of people have when they're trying to be helpful. They love them so much that they'll do anything to help them, whether it's giving them money, letting them stay for the night, giving them shelter, helping them pay their bills. You know, if somebody's giving an honest effort and they're really trying to stay sober, helping them out's not necessarily a bad thing. But if it could very well easily be an addict that's just trying to use you, and he's playing on your heartstrings. And if that's the case, you want to make sure and cut that guy off. That's true love. Tough love is true love. You definitely want to make sure you draw healthy boundaries, and don't put up with anything that compromises yourself as a person. It's very hard. It's difficult to deal with addicts, but you have to protect yourself. And you know what? There's right now people that are wrapped up in their addiction. They're so selfish and so self-centered that they can't see the damage that they're causing their loved ones and other people in their lives. And until they sober up, they might not see. And most of them don't harm people on purpose. Most of them don't want to live the way they're living. Most of them would rather be sober, but most of them don't realize that there's a solution. And that solution starts when you ask another alcoholic or another addict for help.